Afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today to learn more about this very important project in our county. We at the JCRC are very excited to be helping our colleagues and neighbors at the Scotland AME Church and their allies and supporters throughout the county to make the upcoming Juneteenth weekend-long festivities and events, community building events, a success. And we really want to be able to share this terrific community building opportunity with institutions in our community. So we really appreciate you all coming on to learn about how your institution can be engaged. But the first thing we want to do is really give you a good sense of why we're doing this and why Scotland AME is doing this and what the history of it is. And there is quite a rich history for us as residents of Montgomery County. With that, I am delighted to introduce the Vice President of Montgomery County Council, Andrew Friedson, who represents District 1, where Scotland AME is located. I can tell you that although I have known about the efforts underway at Scotland AME for some time, it was when I actually heard Councilmember Friedson speak on this that it really became really motivated to want to be a meaningful supporter of this endeavor. It's an amazing history, it's an important history, and it's something that I think too few people in Montgomery County are aware of. And it's incumbent upon all of us as members of the larger Montgomery County community to listen and learn and be a part of building for the future. So with that, I turn it over to Councilmember Friedson.
Well, Gayla, thank you so much. I'm really just humbled to be part of this effort and really grateful to JCRC for convening us, and really glad to be with Letitia and Chuck, two friends who have been great leaders in this community and who really are leading this effort, and to join Paul, who's really been their champion and their partner and has been amazing as part of this effort. But let me just tell you my involvement here and why I care so much about this, hoping that helps to make you feel interested in engaging, not just individually, but I hope collectively with your congregations and your organizations and with our broader Jewish community, because I ultimately feel that is important. About 3.5 years ago, a little bit more, actually, almost 4 years ago at this point, there were two huge storms that took place in the summer of 2019. And what has been an unfortunate reality for the Scotland AME Zion Church, which due to forces unrelated to decisions that they have made, but decisions that have been pressed upon them, they have faced flooding issues. And this particular storm was bad. It was bad in places all around the county, but it was horrible for the Scotland AME Zion Church. And it flooded the church. It made it uninhabitable. It required the church to stop worshiping because it was unsafe. And there ultimately, a little bit after that, several months after that, was a meeting that was convened by the pastor and by community leaders to talk about what we could do, what was going to happen. And we sat in the church along 7 Locks Road, and it was held up by 2x4s, which is still held up by today. And I made a commitment that this is a community that had been fighting alone for too long and was not going to fight alone this time. And I had no idea what that was going to mean, but I felt really strongly in my kishkas that this was our moment and our opportunity to begin to right some of the historical wrongs, to do the type of restorative justice that we all talk about, that our social justice organizations within our congregations talk about, that I talk about as a a public official, and that we say in Montgomery County that we live our values out loud. Well, this was an opportunity to do it. And in a place where, I grew up with members of the Scotland AME Zion Church. I grew up with friends and coaches and peers in the Scotland community. And so this very much felt like somebody in my home, in my community, needed help, and we needed to step up. And little did I know that I would get a phone call a little bit later from Mitch Rails to say, hey, what can I do to help? And then Paul came around, and this amazing process started that has been led by the church, but supported by so many people doing the things that weren't done 50 years ago and 100 years ago, when this community was left isolated, where the outside community, of which many of us are part and live today, encroached upon it. This once huge area that included Cabin John Regional Park, that included the Cabin John Village Shopping Center, where I spent so much time, that included homes and townhomes that are there today, used to be part of this thriving community that sustained on its own based on outside forces. And the outside forces previously were human outside forces, were us. And in this particular case, they're natural or divine outside forces with the flooding. But nonetheless, it is decisions not made by them that have caused these challenges, many of which that have been created or exacerbated by decision after decision to exclude, to isolate, to keep them out, and to force them inward, and to erect literal and proverbial walls around this community with the rest of our community. And for the first time, I think we have this unique and extraordinary opportunity to break down those barriers, to eliminate those walls. And in an odd way, because we are the strangers more than they are, this was their home before it was most of ours, almost all of ours, maybe every single one of us, certainly my family, but they were made to be strangers in their own community, in their own homes. And we have an obligation to look after the stranger, especially when the strangers are not strangers at all, that we have created this dynamic. And so as a public official, as a Jew, as somebody who cares very deeply, as an individual who grew up in this community, I just feel so connected and so a part of this effort. And it has just been such a humbling experience. I just want to speak about Juneteenth as well. Juneteenth is the story in Galveston, Texas, of when, famously, as it is said, that the African-American community there did not become free. The Emancipation Proclamation, obviously much earlier, the Robert E. Lee surrendering the Confederacy much earlier, but it wasn't the time they became free, but the time they found out. That is what is celebrated, the realization of freedom, not the proclamation of freedom, which we could speak to as wanderers in the desert. And what is so impactful to me when we talk about this is how many people in our community have driven by this small, humble, white structure along Seven Locks Road, within a mile or 2 miles of a home or a school or a shopping center of where they live, and had no idea that this was the center of a thriving Black community that lifted itself up during Reconstruction beyond slavery to build this incredible community that worked together to bond themselves, to build schools, to educate themselves, that was the place in which civil rights leaders during the heart of the civil rights movement came to speak and to lift people up, that with community members and Joyce Siegel in the 1960s and 1970s with Save Our Scotland, worked to fight back against encroachment, but also to tutor children after school and to make sure that resources and education and enrichment was happening. And that is the history of this building. And I just think it is our obligation. I've said before, if those walls could talk, they would tell our story. not just the Scotland community story, not just the church's story of AME Zion worshipers. They would tell the story of Potomac. They would tell the story of Montgomery County. They would tell the story of our country. And the parts of the story that we are not very proud of, and the parts of the story that I think that we need to retell, and you know, the power and the lack of power, and the giving and the taking of things, and we need to reconcile that. We need to understand our past. We need to make sure that every person in our community understands what this building is, what this community is, what our history is. And so that's why the Second Century Project, not just the last 100 years, which I hope we do not lose, but that we also look ahead and make it relevant for the next 100 years to make sure that every child in Montgomery County understands this story, not just to uplift the Scotland community children, not to uplift the worshipers at this particular church, but to make sure that this focal point of our story, the structures that tell that story, and the symbolism of dismantling of the less literal structures that have created the challenges can rise and can be firm and can be able to stand for at least another 100 years. And I think that's our obligation as Jews. I think that's our obligation as a beloved community. And I am just very proud to be part of it. And I hope that you will join all of us here to be part of it too, and help us to recruit an army of loving kindness. And I represent and live in Bethesda, Beit Chesed, a house of loving kindness. And the decision of whether or not we will be a house of loving kindness is ones that we make every day. And it's ones that we can make, and one that we can make here with this project. And so I hope that we can live that value out loud, those Jewish values out loud, and we can join together to do this. So thank you for allowing me to join and be part of this effort. And I hope you'll join us too.
Thank you, Councilmember Friedson. Hi, I'm Rabbi Abby Shrovsky. I'm the Director of Intergroup Relations and the Rabbi in Residence for JCRC. And it is my honor today to introduce our two speakers, Letitia Gasaway-Paul and Chuck Williams, to tell you a little bit about them. And I wish I'm going to see if I can also bring them up on the, I don't know if Gila, if you could help me with bringing them up onto the screen as well. So as I'm on, because we're a couple years into this and I'm still figuring out some of the tech, but it is wonderful to be in a space and to be part of a conversation with people who embody the ideal of what it means to serve, what it means to be part of a larger service to a community, and really take on, you know, as we would say in the Jewish community, a sense of obligation, of chiyuv, of what it means to not just know that this is what you do, but that really this is what you do. This is what we should do, because this is our community, these are our people. This is what we do to build and to rebuild. And while the council member took much of the Torah that I would have loved to share, and you can start writing sermons for some of the rabbis in the community, I think that'd be cool. One of the stories that strikes me, and I come back to a lot, is the one about Choni the circle maker, and that he was planting trees. And the discussion and the story in the rabbinic text talks about, you know, why plant trees. And a person is planting a tree and his neighbor says, but you'll never see that tree grow. And he said, I don't plant it for me, I plant it for my grandchildren. I plant it for who's going to come next. And when I think about the words that we're going to hear today and the story that we're sharing today, I'm struck that it's not just what comes next. It's not that second century, but there's also this deep honor that's coming up for all of those trees that were torn out. And how is this also not just a planting, but a replanting? So it is with that I would like to share a little bit about our two speakers, and then I will turn it over to Letitia and to Chuck. So Letitia Gassaway Paul is the great granddaughter of William Dove, the founder of the Scotland community, which he acquired in March 1880. Dove purchased 36 acres at an auction for $210. Raised in the community her ancestors fought for, Letitia is fully invested in strong leadership roles, advocating for the Scotland community of Potomac, Maryland. As a board member of the Scotland Homeowners Association, she plays a critical role in the revitalization of the Scotland community through renovations and upgrades. Along with her sisters, Teresa Gassaway Gleaton and Latrice Gassaway Johnson, they made it their mission to be a link to building a stronger community by organizing and executing programs for their underserved population. The state of Maryland has recognized their accomplishments through the Maryland Excels in the Spotlight series. There is so much that can be said about both Letitia and Chuck, and I have condensed some of that, but I'd like to share just a few highlights. That Letitia is a passionate philanthropist, community organizer, and faith leader, and she credits her grandparents, the late Melvin L. Crawford Sr. and the late Reverend Mary E. Crawford, with instilling in her the values that draw her to community work. And Chuck Williams joined the Scotland AME Zion Church of Potomac, Maryland in 2006. Prior to joining Scotland, Chuck was active in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America and worked diligently with the ELCA's Mission 90, an initiative to build ethnic diversity within the Lutheran denomination. In 2010, Chuck was elected to the president of the Scotland Lay Council and also was elected to secretary of the Baltimore District Lay Council. Chuck has served in the church community in various roles, most recently as chairman of the newly formed CLC Communications Commission to upgrade the Connectional Lay Council's digital and editorial communications. Chuck has a strong belief that the mission of the church can only be completely fulfilled when the laity steps in to make a difference in the world. And with that, I turn it over to Letitia and to Chuck.
Hello there. Thank you so much for that introduction. It's am I Chuck if I'm going first? Am I speaking or are you speaking? Okay. All right, I'm going to go first. So I'm Letitia Gassaway Paul. I am the 5th generation descendant of William Dove, as that was just mentioned. My grandfather acquired 36 acres of land for $210 in 1880. With that 36 acres of land throughout the years in the 60s, it was not kept up and the county neglected, like Councilmember Friedson said, neglected to help assist. They excluded and isolated Scotland, the land that we currently live on today in Scotland AME Zion Church. What the county was trying to do was force my family off its property. And with doing that, when you force families off their property, there's no other options. So that meant that my ancestors were going to be forced into foster care. We were going to be forced into homelessness. We were going to be forced into abandonment. These were the things that the county were putting together so that we could not stay on our land. And again, today, if it had not been for the Interfaith Committee and Joyce Siegel, Mrs. Mason, then I would not be standing here. I would not be here today. It was for the Interfaith Committee that stepped up and said, you know what? We see what you're doing to county. We see what you're doing, and we're going to put a stop to it. And I always think of The Interfaith Committee, I think of stand for something or falling for anything. I'm going to read a poem that pretty much sums up everything that has happened to my ancestors and up until the flood, and then I'll go into a little bit of filling in the gap. And it goes as follows. In the summer of 2019, I had the wind knocked out of me. Tropical storms were very intense and flooded my place of peace. Scotland AME Zion Church, water damaged and no longer safe. But I will not give up on my God's house, my light, my sacred place. So I stand today without ceasing, and here today I stand. My church, my people in 1924, built with their bare hands. While most days I feel empty, I speak peace to manage the storm. A concrete mindset upon me, no worry, fear, or harm. I'm from the church where the doors are always open, in the church where the ushers will welcome you in a church where in prayer God's hands are upon us, in a church where I learned the debt paid for my sin, and the church where I'm baptized and all of my family, and the church where my God has mercy upon me, and the church where we go because no one is perfect, and the church by the river my spirit set free, and the church of generations of that deep-rooted faith, and the church I'll fight for and I'll stand and I'll cry for my church, Father God, for my church, please don't pass me by for my church. And I say that and I stand by that because I believe in we can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And that is my belief. So here today, when I'm talking to the interfaith or I'm talking to the community and they say, why Scotland? Because we could go up and we can move somewhere else. We could go to another place. You could take this money that you're raising and you can go to another community somewhere else. You can go to another ground. You can have another church built on holy ground. Scotland is more than just ground for me. Scotland was the land that my grandfather purchased, and he was a slave. It is sacred for me. Not just Scotland Church of the holy ground of that building, of that foundation, but all of Scotland. So it's not easy for me to sit down and say that this doesn't mean anything to me. And I'm passionate about that. So it was the one thing that we had. And for whatever reason, the county wanted to take away, which isn't right. And because of Save Our Scotland and Mrs. Siegel and my grandfather, Melvin Crawford, and Mrs. Mason and the Interfaith Committee, and they stepped in and they started to Save Our Scotland. What is Save Our Scotland, you ask? Save Our Scotland was a group of synagogues, churches, the Interfaith Committee that came together and said no more. Okay, they had signs made. They attended hearings. Like Councilmember Friedson said, they had tutoring. They had fashion shows. They raised money. They raised awareness. They did not sleep until the work was done. And it took a lot of the interfaith community to come together because if you're going to go up with the county, you have to have strength. And I always say that there is numbers and power. There's numbers and strength. So if you have that, there is powers in that. And if you have that, then you're going to be okay. And that's why I love the way that the Interfaith Committee extends the olive branch, because there's a lot of days that I say, we can't do this alone. And I feel like the Interfaith Committee gives that strength and say, we see you as a person. We see you for who you are, because that's not always the truth when it comes to the county. Now, it might be different, but then it wasn't. And these things are still happening. And I thank God for another day to get all of the wrong things right. And that's why we're here. We have an opportunity to get all of the wrong things right. And I mean that when I say that, because if we know these things took place and we know that these things are happening, and just being freed isn't enough. What we were taken away was opportunity. And now that we're not in our church, the reason we're not in our church is because there was a 7 Locks Road that was built. So force causes resistance. So when water puts pressure, it's got to U-turn and go somewhere. And the basement was empty space. So that's why the church flooded. Seven Locks Road, it was one dirt road. When you put a road right in the middle, the water's going to hit it. It's going to turn around, you turn, and it went right into empty space. Water fills the space, and that is the basement. And that is why the church flooded. And that is why Seven Locks Road, which had to have been built with the approval of the county, and it plays a significant part of when you would take one step forward, you take 3 steps back. You can't do that, and it's not right. So that's why it's always like starting from square one. This reminds me of 1960s all over again. And again, with the Interfaith Committee, sometimes I feel like I can't do it. Sometimes we as Scotland feel like we can't do it, but you know, it's almost like saying, wait a minute, you're falling back. We got you. We can do it. And we're going to do this together. So I thank all of you in the Interfaith Committee for seeing us as a person and understanding why it's so important for us to maintain and be at Scotland. Because if it had not been for the Interfaith Committee, I don't know if we would still be here and moving forward. And that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you.
Wow.
Wow. Chuck, please.
Yeah, sometimes I always hold my breath. It's hard to follow Letitia a lot of times, but I'm going to try to see if I can get a message out to you. So I'm going to talk about just some of the projects that Scotland is doing within the community. There's a proverb that in our books, the Bible and the Torah that we share: train up a child in the way they should go, and when they are old, they will not depart. And some of the things that we have done at Scotland in the immediate past is training up children so that they follow those faith values that we have been taught. Several years ago, we sent 2 teams of young people to an international competition within the AME Zion Church for Bible Jeopardy. And we're proud that they came in 2nd place. So I think we did a pretty good job. We also fought to get the what we now proudly call the Betty Thompson Community Center within Scotland. And that was a project that had been ignored for several years, but the church stepped up to lead the way in order to get that project accomplished. And now the children of Scotland have some place where they can go for recreation purposes, and the community has some place for meetings. Recently, we formed a recovery ministry because we wanted to reach out. We all know what the situation is these days as far as addiction is concerned, and we wanted to do something to help address that. And obviously, we've had a food pantry or hunger ministry. So we had a food pantry to help with that. And we also, as with many of us, enjoyed having a place of worship. So that's one of the things that was one of the joys, one of the things that attracted me to Scotland. And the problem is that when the flood of 2019 occurred, it took all of that away. Now, we've been able to meet as far as worship is concerned. We've had some generous offers from other houses of faith that allowed us to assemble. We've assembled online with Zoom, for an example. But we want to do something so we can restore the building so that we can get back to the ministries that we once carried on within there. So we have what we call the Second Century Project. And the project is basically 3 phases. Phase 1 is the restoration of the historic building. We want to get that back up and running. And we want to at least let that be a start where we get a foothold back into the community to get some activities going again. The second phase to that is what we call the regeneration phase. And the purpose behind that is that we recognize what caused the flooding in the first place, as Letitia mentioned. So we want to do some things to address those things so that we don't repeat the same mistake over and over again. That we, have some stormwater management in place so that we can prevent flooding in the future. The last phase of it is the rejuvenation phase, and that's the phase where we're looking at adding a new structure onto the historic structure. This will give us a total of 4 times as much space as we previously had. And we want to be able to do that so that we can expand our ministry, so that we can reach out and do other things that we may not have been doing in the past. So for all 3 phases and the things that we're looking for, it's a $10 million project that we're looking at. So, we know that we have a journey ahead of us, but we're making progress, and we want to continue to do that. And with the help of everyone, we'll be able to get that done. Some of the things that we want to do is community outreach once again. And our community is diverse now. So we want to be able to look at the community. We want to be able to help the entire community and not necessarily just the African-American portion of the community. Within the Scotland community itself, there is much diversity in terms of there's Latinos, there are people who have moved in from parts of Africa and parts of Central and South America. So we want to be able to help the entire community. And we want to be a partner with other churches and synagogues and houses of faith throughout the greater Potomac area, so that we have some things that we want to look at. Right now, one of the things that we're discussing, we have a group that we call the Seven Locks Men's Fellowship. And one of the things that we're looking at is prison ministry, and how can we collectively come together so that we can do some things to address prison ministry and what can be done for that. To get all of that going, obviously we have a capital campaign or fundraising, if you will call it that. One of the projects that we have that we're dealing with right now that we're introducing or rolling out is the Juneteenth Heritage Festival. I do want to say that as far as the Juneteenth Heritage Festival is concerned, people have misconstrued that to be a fundraising. We have added a fundraising component to that. But once again, with the shared values that we have with the Jewish community in particular, if we remember in the book of Joshua, there was a point where after they crossed into the promised land, they set up 12 stones. And the purpose was to say, when our children ask us, what do these stones mean? We can tell the story. As far as Juneteenth is concerned, and as my friend Andrew, who I'm going to defer and call him Vice President of the Council, Friedson, mentioned, is what happened in Galveston, Texas. So even though the Emancipation Proclamation was written, even though the Civil War had come to an end, we still had folks that were not aware that they are no longer enslaved. So we want to always pay homage to that, because that's when here in these United States, we had true freedom, at least on paper, of our persons, that we can continue that. So we hold that near and dear. I'm going to defer to Letitia on that, because she has been doing a Juneteenth festival within the Scotland community for years. It's just we made a decision this year to add a fundraising component to that. We'll probably talk about that later. I don't want to go beyond my time here. So I'm going to thank you for allowing me to share what we have done and what we look to do in the future to serve not only the Scotland community, but the greater Potomac community. And thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Chuck. Marla, we're pleased to have Marla Schulman, JCRC board member and co-chair of the co-chair of the intergroup commission. It's my commission, I should remember that. Is also going to share about some of the work that her congregation has been doing, as well as work with a few other organizations throughout the county that have intersected with the work that's going on with the Scotland community.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Chuck and Letitia, for sharing this information and your stories. Like Vice President of our council, Friedson, I grew up in Potomac and had as my peers members of the Scotland community. It was a few years before him, but we don't need to get into that. So this is an especially personal project for me as well. And I come to it through my role at JCRC, as that Rabbi Shirofsky mentioned, as well as chair of B'nai Israel, Congregation's Faith Community Outreach Committee. And so together with Reverend Denise Diab from Bradley Hills Presbyterian, we are working with a committee of about 25 people representing about 10 different congregations across our local community, including Washington Hebrew Congregation, to envision what an interfaith and social action presence at the Juneteenth Festival can look like. So we heard this amazing story about the Scotland AME Zion Church and the Scotland community. And now we may be wondering, what can we as local synagogues do to help and to support this effort? So as Chuck mentioned, this Juneteenth Festival is really envisioned to be a way to bring together all kinds of congregations and social action efforts across the community. Letitia really has a vision for this project to serve as a catalyst for interfaith and intergroup relationship building and collaboration that really builds on the work that started in the 60s that she mentioned. So we're really excited to be able to create opportunities for other faith communities to participate in the Juneteenth Festival weekend. And I just want to share some of the specifics. Most of you should have received emails from us, but if you haven't, I'll share with you different ways that you can participate. We are asking as many area congregations and social action organizations to sign on as supporters of this Second Century project. And in so doing, we will have a presence at the festival on Monday, June 19th at the Cabin John Village Shopping Center under the heading of what it means to be a good neighbor. And we will be facilitating get to know your neighbors bingo game, where we'll be sending participants out into the festival to get to know others in our community and build relationships. And we want to be able to list as many supporting congregations as possible along with this information that we're giving out. So really that's a pretty simple ask to ask you as congregations to sign on as a supporter. In addition, there is an opportunity for congregations who are interested, completely voluntary, to donate funds. And we've had really great support so far from many area congregations who are interested in doing that. Another opportunity to get involved that weekend will be for an interfaith service Sunday morning, June 18th, that will be involving as many members of the faith community as possible, a breakfast and a worship service. The information about all of this can be found on the festival website, and that's something we can include in the chat and share with you. And finally, another opportunity to participate in this important work is really around education. One of the first ways I became aware of this project is when Chuck and Letitia came and spoke from our Bima on the Saturday morning of MLK weekend and really shared in a lot more depth their story about their community and their church. And many of our members of B'nai Israel were moved to rally to support this effort. And we know that the importance of educating our members of our congregation about this history and about these wrongs, as Letitia said, that need to be made right is really important. So we're looking for congregations who want to partner in groups of 2 to 4 with congregations of other faiths to hold programs like this, but a little more extensive for members of Scotland AME Zion to share the story of their community. We've had a lot of interest in this so far. I know some of you who are on this webinar indicated an interest in doing this, and we will be getting back to you to arrange these educational sessions that we're really looking forward to. And these are sessions that, you know, some we might be able to have take place before this Juneteenth festival, but they can continue on, you know, beyond and even into the fall and next calendar year, because this is a project that's going to be with us for a while. And even Chuck and Letitia and Paul Suki, who are all here and involved, envision as a relationship building effort for the greater faith community way beyond this year's June and Juneteenth festival. So the last thing I just want to share is that part of what we need help is in spreading the word about these opportunities. We also do have opportunities for social action organizations to have tables at the festival and share information about what they do. And we really want to reach as wide a breadth of congregations as we can. We are quite heavy, quite honestly, on the Judeo-Christian congregations, and would love to be able to do some outreach to Muslim congregations and even other those non-Abrahamic faiths. So if any of you has connections to clergy or, you know, lay leadership at any other such organizations and can help us, that would be greatly appreciated. So my email address can certainly be made available through Rabbi Shorofsky, and I look forward to talking with any of you about any questions you have about how to participate. We're really looking forward to a really, really strong showing from the Jewish community and the greater faith community to support this important project.
Thank you, Marla. I'm going to attempt to bring everyone onto the screen. Let's see how that goes. Hopefully, attendees can now view everyone. It should work. And thank you, Paul. We also have Paul Tukey here with us. Paul, I know you've told me your role at Glenstone, but my experience with you has been that you're the guy who is just thinking through everything related to Juneteenth and the Scotland AME Zion Church Second Century Project. And I'm always struck that you have this sense of what is happening with this? How did I get into this? But there's also this deep love that you're in it and you are here to stay in it, which is wonderful. So we have some questions coming into the Q&A. So the first one is, what does supporting look like for a congregation? What does the several people have mentioned that, but really, what does it mean to be a supporting or a sponsoring or partnering congregation?
Marla, do you want to reiterate, or do you want who should take that?
Well, Paul, you might want to speak more broadly, but in the simplest sense, filling out a form through a sign-up link that we have, and we can actually put this in the chat, is the simplest way to sign on as a supporter and be listed in the information and materials that will be accompanying the festival.
And thank you for that brief introduction. I will jump in. So I'm here on behalf of the Glenstone Museum, which was founded by Mitchell and Emily Rales about the same time that Chuck Williams came to the Scotland AME Zion Church, which is 2006. And about a year and a half ago, I was asked to come into the office, and I'm the director of environmental stewardship, which means I take care of the trees and the grass in the big sense and other things there environmentally related. But in my background, I'm a journalist, and I've run big festivals, and I've written books, and I've told stories, and that's what I've done. And I love the stories of people, including one that I discovered just this week, where William Dove's uncle Henry, he was actually born older than William. He was born in 1830 into slavery, right after the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. He immediately enrolled in the Union Army. He served in the Civil War. He came home and became a tenant farmer and saved up money so he could buy his own 28.5 acres of land, which came to be the Cabin John Village Shopping Center. And he was one of the original 20 signatories of the Black Declaration of Educational Independence, saying we need a school for Black students in Montgomery County. And he was one of the 20 signatories who vowed to pay for the building and pay for the lights and pay for the teachers. And so really he was a founding father of education in Montgomery County. So I love telling that story and how that story needs to be preserved, and how and why everybody in the county doesn't know that story is beyond me, but that's going to change. So how do you support? It's literally in any number of ways. As Chuck said, it is a $10 million project. The project started out closer to 8 million, but through inflation and things like gas pipelines that were discovered underneath the old road that were left there, but they're charging our project to move it out of there to the tune of $500,000. So the price tag has gone up some. Some people say, why does it cost so much? Well, it's because we're trying to fix the flooding issues that the government created through the creation of that road, which functions as a dam. It's extremely expensive, but we want to keep the church where it belongs, where it's historically been. And so supporting certainly can mean writing a check, either the congregation or individuals in the congregation. Supporting can mean being a sponsor. If you're a business owner or no business owners, we still have time left to sponsor this year's festival and future festivals. And Letitia has a vision, as we've already heard, for this festival, where it will become the biggest festival of its kind in the state, maybe even in the country someday. And with a woman like her as our leader, I believe it will happen. And we're going to be telling these stories. That's to me, that's the core. Is people have said, why this church? Why are we here? Why does Mitchell Rails even care? And I tell this story very excitedly, like a broken record, because yes, I have come to love these people. I've come to love Marla and the dedication that she brings to it. And Chuck and Letitia and I communicate in various ways, 7 days a week. I don't believe there's been 5 days that have gone by since the new year that we haven't communicated in some form. So that's my spiel. I'm happy to talk to people offline and answer any questions.
Thank you. Yes, you can certainly reach out to JCRC as well, and we are happy to direct you to who might be the best person to answer it. So one of the questions on my mind, thinking about the Juneteenth, that weekend, and what are you excited about for that? And anyone can answer this, but what do you think is the can't miss program or opportunity or engagement during that weekend? And I'm looking forward to participating in the interfaith prayer breakfast and festivities that morning. So I know that's a highlight for me. And but what should we put on our calendars?
I'll start.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll start. I definitely for me, I would definitely say make sure that the Scotland Interfaith Worship prayer at breakfast is on your calendar. And I'll say why that's the most important for me. And going back to Marla, we have been in contact with the Muslim congregation so that we have a contact for that. But the why is so important for me is because in the 1960s, after Save Our Scotland, after the groundbreaking of the 100 homes, somewhere the Interfaith Committee, it fell off as far as keeping in contacts. So this time we're going to make sure that we get it right. We're going to make sure that even after Juneteenth, that we keep in contact, that we're working together, helping each other and individuals. So if something happens again, we're already in contact. We don't need to start everything again. We don't need to build relationships and communication. We're going to make sure that everything is in order, that it doesn't fall off, and that we are all one under God. And that's just what it is. We all have that same, that faith that knows knows that what keeps us going from day to day, and it never loses its power. So with knowing that, I say that this the interfaith breakfast is the most important to me, because that's the day that we're all going to come together and we're going to sit down, we're going to meet each other, but we're also going to be still and have those relationships and communicate with each other. So for me, that's the most important day, because of the meeting and the just the relationships and just coming together as one without having to do the different festivals. It's no competing on that day. There's nothing else other happening on that day. Come to the Scotland Interfaith Worship Service, and I think that's important for everyone to do that, and that's why building relationships being that link.
I'll piggyback on that also.
Oh,
Yeah, I think.
May I?
Oh,
one
go right
second?
ahead. I'm sorry.
It's okay. No, I just want to add about the breakfast. I know Paul informed me that the decision was made by the committee that the food at the breakfast will be kosher. So meeting Jewish dietary standards, which I found that to be incredibly moving. What that means to be able to, not only just be there, but also like literally break bread with everyone, I think is a testament to your dedication of what it means to build this relationship. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Yes, thank you. It's huge.
Yeah.
So thank you.
And that was part of what I was going to say is that, we want to come together. We look across this country, there is so much. They talk about how spread apart we are ideologically and in terms of, all sorts of things. The only way we're going to be able to start to move forward as a country, as a community, is if we can sit down, and breaking bread together is a good start. The other thing that I wanted to say is that usually if I am invited to someone's home, part of my expectation is that they're going to share part of their culture, whether it's their food, their music, whatever the case may be. And part of what's going on at the Juneteenth Festival is part of sharing some of the rich culture and history of African Americans in the United States in general, but in particular in Montgomery County. So there will be presentations on history of a lot of the communities within Montgomery County. My favorite part of it is probably going to be, as I say, the different genres of music, and we all are probably familiar with. We have the Bethesda Blues and Jazz, where we're going to have an event which will feature R&B music. In particular, a salute to Motown. I think we're all familiar with Motown. I encourage everyone to, come on over, bring your dancing shoes, and let's get ready to just have a good time together. We also have a rich tradition of gospel music in the African American church. We invite you to come to the gospel concert that will be held. That will be up in Germantown. And then there will be a reggae concert. I just watched a program the other night where it talked about all of the different areas of what we call the African diaspora. So it's going to be great to be able to hear some of the contributions from different parts of that diaspora, from Jamaica, from the Caribbean, and from parts in Central and South America through soca music. All of that will be at your fingertips. You're more than welcome to come and enjoy all of that. And I don't want to monopolize the time again. There's a lot of other events that will take place, and I'll let others touch on those.
I certainly thank you, Chuck. Need to put a quick plug in for making sure that you and your members visit the Interfaith and Social Action area of the festival at the shopping center for our Get to Know Your Neighbors bingo, which will really be an opportunity to give this festival a community feel.
I have a question about the education piece. And I know that you have graciously shared your time with B'nai Israel congregation. And I know there are probably people watching this webinar who would be very interested in having an educational program at their synagogue, but you are only 2 people, and God only gave us 24 hours in the day. So do you have, what's your capacity to be able to go to synagogues to speak to people? You know, I know we have Jewish agencies on the call who might be interested in educating their board members about this, agencies that have footprints throughout the county. How can an institution go about making that happen?
I'll take lead on this one. If I'm able to fit it inside my calendar, I would definitely do that. And one of the reasons why I like to go speak and regarding education is because I believe that what this country needs is a day of healing. I'm talking about an actual federal day of healing. When I went to Marsha's house and I heard about the Holocaust and I had tears, and there's so many other things. We can't change the past, but we can't forget that there was hurt that was done and try to sweep it underneath the ground, underneath the dirt, as if it didn't happen. And I think once we get the healing that we need as a nation and as a country, there's a whole lot of violence that is stopped and return. We need you have mental awareness, mental health. We need a national day of healing to actually just get to go see the counselor, just talk about it, just having a conversation. And I think that's all a part of education. And I firmly believe that, and I always say that if I could make June 17th the federal day of healing, I would do just that, because there's so much dirt, there's so many things, there's so much negativity that has happened in our past. And no, we can't change the past. However, going forward, what can we do to help heal going forward? And that is part of educating of these are the things that's happened. What can we do so that they won't happen again? And how can we heal so that we can move forward? And if there's a day that I'm available, I'm all in on going from place to help talk and speak on educating.
Thank you. And I also think that it could be really wonderful for our religious school students.
Yeah.
It's so important, you know, when you're teaching, to teach in a way that is tangible for them.
Yeah.
And to,
Yeah.
you know, this is something that's in their community, that is in their backyard, that is right here and now. So I think it would be great actually to have a curriculum written up that is specific to, and Marla and Abby know I've been talking about this, that really we could distribute to religious schools, where they can actually, use this history of this particular institution as a real wonderful springing off point for class lessons.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And echoing what Letitia said, let me first say, yeah, that's a great idea. Be careful not to send it to Florida. We don't want it to get banned or anything.
Yeah.
But
We're in Maryland. Yes. Agreed.
Absolutely. But it is something that we must do, and something along the lines of National Day of Reconciliation would be great. We can't continue to have things swept under the rug, as Letitia said, based on skin color or faith, because someone practices one faith or the other, that we're holding things against. We need to be able to come together as a community, and hopefully that becomes a model for the country. And it will be, I can't even begin to fathom what we would be able to accomplish if we're all on the same page. There's an expression that I've heard before: as long as the ties that bind us together are stronger than those that will tear us apart, we can do amazing things.
Amen. Amen to that.
Paul, would you like to get the last word in? And then I want to be mindful of everyone's time that you've given today, including our attendees on the who are watching this as it happens, and those who are watching the recording.
I just want to nudge Letitia to it's not technically part of Juneteenth, but Letitia, would you talk about June 16th and this very special evening that you're planning and your family is planning? Because I think this will be uniquely appealing to this audience.
Yes. So on June 16th, we are honoring and celebrating Mrs. Siegel's 90th birthday. The invitation links are it's there live, so we can send that out.
Yes.
Mrs. Joyce Siegel, she's honorary, legendary in my eyes. Her community, I'm trying to find an evening to honor her, and she tells me, no, I don't want an evening about me. I want an evening about what can we do regarding world change. That just tells you how great of a person that she is. She wants a evening, a day of how are we going to make change. If we're going to celebrate my birthday, that's what I want. She's about change. She's about movement. And on her birthday, we're going to have it on June 16th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Doubletree by Hilton in Gaithersburg, Maryland. It is at the Doubletree that is across from the Montgomery County Fairgrounds. And send me the link. Text me the link, please, to my phone, and I'll can we do that?
For the invite?
Yeah, the invite, the invite or the tickets, both. We'll get you that information. The invite. Yes.
Wonderful.
On
We
June
will
16th.
send out a follow-up email and share it with those who received this first email about today's program, and the recording will be available, as well as the different resources, and we'll be sure to include and see how we can get all of this information out and known to the Jewish community. Thank you, everyone, for your time today. As I said, this is truly an important historical moment for our county and for our communities. And I thank you all for the work that you are doing to make this happen. And I am so excited that JCRC is part of this work and standing beside you as your neighbors, colleagues, and friends. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
We'll see you on June 18th for the Interfaith Breakfast and prayer service, and on Juneteenth.